enact Ron Amos as Secretary Treasurer for this meeting. Thank you. Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? No, all those in favor? There you go. Congratulations. The not Secretary Treasurer this evening, Russell, is fog bound somewhere. Vancouver, Calgary,
Regina, maybe?
someplace
Place like that.
someplace not on the island. And Peter Coleman is in the UK and sends his regrets. Adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Seconder. Donna, any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. The consent agenda is below. It's the adoption of the regular meeting minutes from the regular board meeting on September the 24th.
So moved.
Seconder. Thank you, Rick. All those in favor? And that's carried. The board had an in-camera meeting on October the 8th and this evening regarding labor relations and property items. We have a presentation this evening welcoming back for an encore performance Mr. Randy Gray on the Elementary Trades Project. Welcome, Randy.
Go ahead.
The floor is yours. Give or take. Give, perhaps.
So we have Cody Elementary here, and I'd like to know, why are you all here? Last year in School District 71, we implemented Tri-Trade to the intermediate grades, grades 6 and 7s. And it proved such a great success that we're going to embark on trying to get as many of the upper intermediate grades exposed to careers and mainly looking at trades, hands-on learning. We're finding that many students don't get an opportunity to really experience a hands-on experience and to understand what a trade is. Across the province, we're looking at trying to increase the awareness of trades. And with this project, we actually take some of the senior students, grade 11s and 12s, to be the mentors and the teachers for these younger students. It's a great opportunity for students that have taken some shop courses in the past to be able to share their skills, make sure that they cover proper safety techniques, but also just to network and mentor these younger students. Typically, we have adults describe to students what it's like to go into the trades, but it's quite a different perspective when young adults, not even adults, young adolescents actually are working with these intermediate grades. So we cover a lot of different trades, such as we do a bit of carpentry, we do a bit of plumbing, some drywall, painting, and we do some concrete work. So and each time it's a little bit different. We're constantly improvising and changing. We're very fortunate in that we do have an intro to the trades course at the senior levels, where we built these 4x8 units that actually have all those components in it. We have excellent examples for students to actually see what is in behind the walls of their house. The students actually get to use the tools. They actually get to make parts or take components apart. They do a little bit of electrical, even just changing an extension cord. And they learn about the different types of wires and how electricity flows through a wire. Of course, nothing is live around the students.
Gotta say that.
A program called STEP, which is Standard Technical Education Project, where we make picnic tables and garbage cans and benches. And with that process, we're trying to teach job readiness and safety. We are strong believers in work safe and educating youth prior to going out on the job site what their rights and responsibilities are. So these students, the young ones, the intermediates, come in and we apply the same principles. And we teach them about the right to refuse work. If any of these young students don't feel comfortable, they know that they are to say that they're not ready, they do not want to do a certain task. And that's the same thing on the job site. They are aware of what their rights and responsibilities are. And we dress the students in the proper attire with high-vis vests, and they hopefully come dressed appropriately. They bring a lunch. We start off the day with learning a bit about safety and what trades are, so that students can, when they see a house, they actually understand the different trades and the different people that put the house together. That's just a very simple example. And then we go out into the shop area and outside, and we break them down into groups of 4 to 5 students. And my senior students, they come earlier in the morning, and they get a chance to prepare and practice and get their materials ready. So it's a full day for them. The idea is to have fun. And if you're not having fun, then lots of times youth are not as engaged. And throughout this whole day, the students are very, very engaged. And I think for multiple reasons. One is that they all have the opportunity to be doing something at the same time, not watching, but doing. So that's quite challenging, but not insurmountable. So we try to have lots of materials, lots of tools, and we tend to emphasize more on this experience. The leaders, they're fantastic. It's so nice to see the leaders, the students, senior students, working with these youth. It's a wonderful experience, and we're going to continue on with it throughout this year in Comox Valley.
It was the second group we did Cape Lazo last year, and then we just finished third group last week, and that was, well, it was Corning Elementary, Cape Lazo was last year, and then we just finished with Miracle Beach. And November 4th, which anybody is welcome to come out. We're inviting Aspen Park to come. There's 45 students there, so it's double the numbers. That means I need double the leaders, so I'm looking at 12 high school students. And Oliver Belsing is my partner out at Sandwich, so it's just the two of us, and then all the student leaders. And it has been very successful. And the student leaders like it, and the kids like it. And it's all about hands-on. And so that's working really well. I'm going to show you another activity that we're going on. And this is happening with Martin Hardy. And he is a grade 7 teacher at Plumage Elementary. And last year I saw him over at maintenance building trying to scrounge different materials and parts when they were tearing down those buildings. And he was looking for nuts and bolts and building materials. And I said, okay, don't worry about scrounging here. I'll help you out when the time comes. And so, yes, he followed it up. And that's what his classroom looked like at the start of the school year. You might have read about it in the newspaper. And so he talked to the students and going, okay, this is our main project for the year. We need to apply our school learning as a project to making the desks and sitting implements. And so I've been very fortunate in being able to go into the class and teach them proper safety around.
He's drilling into his knee. Is that a safety?
They know not to drill into their knee.
They know that.
And I was very fortunate last year to the school district to be given $10,000 worth of dual cordless power tools. And so this is, rather than just split it up to all the schools, I've kept it as a unit so that I can put on these kind of events where the students can actually take 6 jigsaws there, 10 drills, all cordless material. And most of them have never touched a power tool before, and so they learn very quickly, and they've taken through some little tests and written tests to make sure that they're safe and confident and comfortable. And now you just go there and you see them. They just know how to change a jigsaw blade and know how to get the right size drill bit and drive screws. And they put the laminate on the top there. And this is the first laminate we put on, and it's like the hands-on activity to feel. Oh, isn't it nice? There's no little lumps underneath the arborite that we put on top. And Martin is just an awesome teacher in that he's willing to step outside the norm and the mold. And so whenever I find a teacher like that, I'm more than willing to put in my extra time to help him with that. And so that's what I've done, and it's turned into quite a large project, but that's a good thing. It's kind of interesting just today, Kelly Giorgiani gave me a call because we've got another tri-trade on the 4th, and a fellow from BC Hydro contacted her and said that he wants to come up to our district because our district seems to have the most amount of premises going into BC Hydro in the province. He's wondering why is that? So I invited him to the tri-trade, and he's super pumped. So he's coming up to check out the tri-trade on November 4th. Is there questions?
Trustees, any questions or comments? Janice?
So I guess I want to go to school. This is awesome. But I guess what I was concerned about, I'm wondering how our district is leading that, is that my understanding is that districts are really doing wonderful on these apprenticeship programs. But once the kids graduate, when they go to like BCIT or something like that, we're now hearing that because there's so many kids wanting to go into the program, there's that wait list. So as a district, what can we do to maybe to support you and those students getting involved? What can we do maybe to push the government saying open up more spots? Because you're asking us to, trades are really important for our future education and our future generation, but yet there's no spots at that secondary level for them, that post-secondary level for them.
I would already say that you guys do a ton of stuff. You may not know what goes on, but just supporting me and what I do in the district as the career coordinator. We have so much going on here in the district, and we also give a lot of feedback to the ministry folk and the ITAs, your training authority. And really, my philosophy is trying to get the programs into the school system. So our basic auto program is a classic example. We have 16 students that go through auto service tech. If we have to put the kids through any college from any district, we would never be getting that amount of seats. So anytime you bring a level 1 program into the high school system, then you can control how many seats that you're offering. And so we brought carpentry in this year with Rob Ertz. We have a first year running our basic carpentry, and we have 20 students signed up to that. 7th grade, 11th, 12th. So that's a different program. Whereas 501 said any kids for heavy duty, I get no seats. 501 said they're cook, I have to ask for maybe 5 seats. And, it's all about building. It's, I think, at the high school level. Just once a student goes out there to get a job, they don't have to do a foundation program to get the job. If they have the right attitude and work ethic, they can get a job and they can go through the apprenticeship model. And once you do the apprenticeship model, you only have to go for 6 weeks and any time during the year. You do not need to go for a full 6 to 10 months. But we're so ingrained that we think that we're not adequate in the high school system to prepare kids to go into the job force, that we send them on to post-secondary. And colleges have taken advantage of that. So that they want to build their foundation programs, but really you don't have to pay for them. So our high school shop programs, if you go through an automotive program, you have a really good skill set. You should be able to go to any of the auto dealerships and actually start working and then work your way up. So I have a little different philosophy than sending everybody off to college. I sort of, let's try to get our shop programs and our tech ed programs to the point where the kids are prepared to go out right into a job. But you guys do support this great.
Mr. DeMayo has a comment?
Sure. Great question. We had the superintendent of trades and technology, Larry Espy, was here visiting the program actually out at Sandwich, and that exact same question was posed to him, or he posed to the group at a meeting around what obstacles and what can they do from the ministry's end to help our students get to that next level. And those things about trying to break down some barricades, the post-secondary availability, the number of seats available, working with IT, all those things you're hearing talk about are things that are being addressed, and he's hearing that around the province. So that's he specifically came to talk to our folks in our district about those things, hearing some of the programs that we initiate here in our district.
So I'm just going to, I'll be correct with this. Let's say that you want to see that video in row. I really strongly believe in sharing resources to help people move ahead. So I did a careers department on the school district website. You go to the careers website. This is where I try to store all of my information to share with counselors and teachers and that. And you just have to go to videos. And I've got some videos right there, elementary tri-trade. I've got some of our past ACES students that talk about working up north. And if you want to see a really cool one, is if we go into resources and go to teachers and technology teachers. Chris Armstrong is a metalwork teacher at Bendy. he has overprescription for his metalworking classes. This guy is a master teacher to get kids excited and turned on into trades. And he's going to present at the Tech Ed conference this weekend because new teachers need to have some kind of model. And he exemplifies what good teaching is. And I believe in sharing these kind of secrets. So I try to put everything up on our careers website so that, if you feel like it or you want to share it with somebody, it should be there. You can always send me an email and I can direct you to it because I'm not a webmaster. Josh helps me. But, it's just junk. So that was...
Yeah, well, I think, the evolution of 21st century learning is really exciting. However, I think what we need to do is do better promotion about telling the public and parents what we're doing. I think that's the loop that we're missing right now. We can all sit here and be amazed by what's happening in our elementary schools. But unless a student has a parent involved in that, nobody else knows. And I think that's the loop that we're missing in the whole process, is telling the general public what's happening in schools. There's a lot of exciting things going on, but I don't think people know that it's really going on. So there's a loop there that we, maybe as a board, we need to address. Whether it's public relations or whatever the case is, but we got to get the message out there. Public education is exciting and it's interesting, and kids are learning and getting ready for life skills.
On behalf of the board, thank you very much, Rainey, for coming out in person and providing the presentation, but also for taking the time to put a video together that gives us a sense of the kids in action, because normally we may not have the opportunity to witness that, and it's great fun. And congratulations to you and the folks you're working with. Thank you.
Everybody is welcome. November 4th is our next tri-trade.
Okay. Duly noted.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to Education Committee report. Trustee Caitlin.
Okay, you see before you the report from the Education Committee regarding on that. I just would like to make one observation. I'm really impressed with the fact that our district is one of the very few districts that, I think this is the third out of third districts that have had an Aboriginal Education Agreement. And that goes to the work of our district principal of Aboriginal Education and our district staff. And I think it's just amazing the work that we're doing supporting our students. And once again, on behalf of the board, an acknowledgement and thank you for that. And just to note that our next meeting is going to be held Tuesday, November the 12th at 6:30 at Pumpmudge Elementary School, and the public is welcome to come out to attend. And motion to accept my minutes unless there's any questions or comments.
A motion?
So,
Seconder? No, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing hearing none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you, Jen. Madam Superintendent, educational updates, achievement contract.
I was going to ask for it to be on the screen, but we're finding that the flip videos were really slow. At Education Committee meeting that Trustee Caitlin was speaking about, we began to talk about the achievement contract. For those of you who don't know, and in fact you all know, because I know you all, an achievement contract is required by every school district. It is our accountability, I suppose, to the Ministry of Education for meeting the prescribed learning outcomes for students. It has taken many forms over the years, and the format that you have in front of you is the latest form, though I've heard again that for next year it will actually look different, maybe a bit more streamlined. I'd like to just very quickly summarize and walk through the document a little bit. You don't need to have the document in front of you if you don't. Just to sort of highlight some of the pieces that are required for us to report. Within the achievement contract, they speak to our academic goals, they speak to our social and emotional goals, and certainly it speaks to our promising practice. So I'm going to just walk through very quickly and answer any questions, and I won't, certainly with your permission, Chairperson, be the only speaker here. There are areas of expertise in the senior staff, and I'll ask them to share some of the content of the report. So this is actually, if you'll notice, this actually is a this is a singleton year contract, but if you recall, it was in the life of a previous board, we were required to report in 3-year blocks for a period of time, and you could actually report for longer periods of time. So there is on our website a report that took us to 2015, and it was the report that spoke from the balcony to the floor, and it had bigger picture kinds of windows, and that was a format that was expected in that day. Things appear to be a bit more streamlined, and so as a superintendent, I am obliged to report on specific things, and the template that you see in front of you are the specific things. But it doesn't mean that we're not still working and moving in the life of that report that takes us to 2015, because there's some big picture valid direction in that report from a previous superintendent and previous board that set in motion many of the things that we're reporting on now. So I need to just make sure that we're respectful of where it began and where we are. And so if you're looking for some of the big picture things and wondering why we're working on certain things in this report, it's because it was set in that bigger window of moving towards 21st century learning, moving towards engagement, recognizing things that are not just measured on a pie graph, for example, sense of belonging and its connection to achievement, engagement, those kinds of things. And so this district has, the reason I'm sharing that is that this district has a mature perspective on moving towards personalized learning in a way that some other districts don't. They are just coming to that now, and this district has been moving towards that understanding for the reasons that were ours, not necessarily the ministry mandated reasons, that were ours because it was good for our kids, and I need to honor that started 4 to 5 years ago and continues on, and in fact is moving quite purposefully on, and some recognition on the part of the province that not all districts are in that same place. So that's the district context. One of the things that anyone would expect us to be accountable for, which is how are we moving our students towards graduation and i.e. the future, and I'll ask the assistant superintendent to speak to what is the second page inside the cover about our grad rates, our challenges, and we are required, I couldn't get away with not doing this, I tried one year, you have to have targets, just saying. And so the targets were done. And the other piece you need to know is that there were this document every year involves teachers, principals, vice principals, trustee. There was a trustee at the table, and a number of people in gathering. We spent a whole day, well, it was for 3 days, but a whole day together finally working on these various areas, and we all come together, and then I, as the superintendent, take the feedback from those larger groups and write the document.
Sure. So looking at our completion rate, our 11 and 12 completion rates were the highest they have been in the last 5 years. One of the interesting figures that came out is there was no significant difference between males versus females in their graduation rate. And that is huge. In the past, we've seen the female rate higher, and in some cases substantially higher than our female rate. So that was some good news. The other one was a 17% increase in our Aboriginal students in their graduation rate from previous years. So some very good successes there. Going back to our male completion rate rose from 67.2% to 76.4%. Their 6-year rate was, as I said, was the highest it had been in the 5 previous years. And if you take a look in the previous years to that, we were anywhere from 9 to 12 percentage points difference, and last year we were 5. So our target, and this is an interesting one, as Sherry pointed out, we have to have targets out there. So not knowing what a provincial average is, how do you set a target? So the target, we went on the difference. And we've targeted a difference of 3% versus, so we're trying to decrease that and eventually get to the point where there isn't a difference. So that's our target as we move forward. So some interesting results. We see us in our exam scores. In past years, exam scores were used because it was something that could be measured across the province. As we all know, the provincial exams had gone the way of the dodo bird for the most part, with the exception of English 12, which is what we use. And again, our students scored 3% above the provincial average. In English 12 and Francais à Home 12 is 3.5% above the average. So the scores are there. The gap is decreasing. We're going in the right direction. So we anticipate the overall graduation gap to decrease from where it has been. So some good news on our completion rate.
As we move through the document, four pages in, we are expected to set goals for ourselves, and we have historically set goals for ourselves, and it would make sense that I'll mention here that the goals for the school district are goals for all students, and that's all students. We have students that we would know as special needs students, students who are of Aboriginal ancestry, students who are English is not their first language. The expectation is that when we set a goal, that it is achievable, and we work towards achievement for all students. So the goals, I don't think, would surprise us very much. I think they're very similar to what we've had in the past. Our first goal was around beginning not beginning, but becoming much more focused in our conversations as we begin to develop personalized learning plans for all students. And that doesn't mean that every student will have an individual personalized learning plan in every subject area. It certainly wouldn't mean that, because that would be virtually impossible, and B, it would be redundant and not necessary. But as we begin to engage teachers and professional staff, principals, vice principals, parents, and most importantly students in conversations about the directions for themselves, those will become sort of the frameworks for a personalized learning plan for students. And we're beginning to believe and understand in everything we've read and everything we've discussed and everything we're beginning to know that there will be critical places in the life of a kindergarten through grade 12 student in the Comox Valley where we will need to be engaging meaningfully with parents around planning, that students will need to have a set of skills that we not necessarily have focused on before, which are about self-discovery and their ability to know themselves as learners, their ability to be critical thinkers, problem solvers, and team workers. And so that demands that we need to look at some different kinds of way of delivering curriculum and indeed some new curriculum itself. So those are ongoing conversations that are in their infancy, but we set it as a goal for ourselves. It's actually our first goal, and it is that we will begin to move towards each student having a personalized learning plan that is developed in collaboration between home and school. Parents will play a much, we hope, deeper and more meaningful role in the lives of their students as they work with us to make sure that we give our students every opportunity to gain the skills that they will need as they move towards the future. And as I said a year ago, we're planning for those are the ones that started with us in kindergarten and who graduate in 2023. And we need to be prepared for that. We need to have their journey shaped for them. And there's lots of places to get on and off, and as the trustee Grinham said, this is an exciting time to be in education because there's lots of permission to do things differently, but it can't just be chaos. It has to be focused, and there has to be maps. So that's what we're working on, and we are moving, as I said, towards focusing those conversations. The second goal is something that became a goal for us 2 achievement contracts ago, and in fact it was a goal set by the Aboriginal Enhancement Agreement for Aboriginal students, and it speaks to the importance of sense of belonging. And what do we know about sense of belonging? We know that achievement can be directly related to a sense of belonging. We know that in the lives of evolving human beings, their ability to feel safe, to feel confident, to feel supported, when they have those things embedded in their daily school life, they have a much bigger opportunity to learn. And all the brain research tells us that when those things are attended to for them, when their emotional health is, when they're feeling secure and they're feeling supported, then their brain is actually physically able to hang on to information in different ways for longer periods of time. So we think that sense of belonging is still a very important goal. It was our #1 goal until we added the personalized learning, and we believe it's measurable. We believe that it's highly critical to students becoming successful in school. Our third goal is around literacy, and of course, and that speaks to the 21st century skills that are required. It is it is the great pride of this district, the work that is done in literacy, recognized across the province by some amazing teachers in classrooms some amazing district lead teachers, and the commitment that this district has placed in literacy for about 10 years. And so we will continue to improve our literacy skills, to work to give students every opportunity to become as proficient in literacy as we possibly can. Numeracy is our fourth goal, and numeracy is a goal that when I talk with my superintendent colleagues, it is probably one of the most difficult academic goals to achieve. Numeracy appears to be, at different times in children's lives, a skill set that is difficult for them to acquire, depending on their development, and it can be different for genders at certain times in their lives. And it certainly is one that has had the most revisions in curriculum, I just have to be honest with you, in my career of 30 years. It is the area of content that has been revised many times. It's been revised many times for all the right reasons, because we learn every time through one revision to another what really works and what doesn't work. And traditional models around teaching math hadn't worked for a very long time. So you have seen a constructivist approach recently, which is actually much more successful, but probably isn't totally the best approach, and we're learning now about the ability for students to be involved kinesthetically around math and all kinds of things, and it will continue to be the most challenging academic area. But it's critical when we talk about trades, it's critical when we talk about 21st century learning skills around creating critical thinkers who can actually create their own stuff, their own things. They need to have math skills. So we'll continue to work on that. And of course, school completion is always in our vision around making sure that our kids complete successfully. Now, successfully doesn't mean only graduation rate. And finally, in the last 2 to 3 years, there's been a recognition both by the ministry and I hope the community that school completion can mean different things for different kids. And they are just as successful if they finish in a line of what they started as elective in a line of study that ends up placing them in the workforce. And that is as valid as a Dogwood certificate for them. It means that when our special needs students finish with us, we have done everything we can, and they have been as resilient a learner as we could possibly have asked for them to learn everything that could have pushed them to be the best that they could be. And that doesn't mean that they get a Dogwood, but they walk across the stage because that's their success path. They've reached their destination. So school completion means different things, and finally there's the recognition that it isn't just about the Dogwood certificate. So that's my piece about that. Now I'm looking at my time. I'd like to move you to some areas. This document speaks to what engage and act really means strategies. I'm just saying, it's just a nice way to say that. So those are the strategies around meeting the goals. But if you go into the middle of the document under promising practices, I was going to ask Director Douglas to speak a little bit about assessment and a couple of the other elementary pieces that are promising practices in our district.
I'd be happy to do that. Thank you. I wanted to say, just before we go into there, I want to talk about something before this, and that's around the early learning work. So our district, we started kindergarten, grade 12. We've spent a tremendous amount of work working with our early childhood educators so that it's the 0 to 5 that come in. And to the point where we brought 2 of our Strong Start people into the work that we've been doing in our district around the competency communication development with the Ministry of Ed. Just for everyone's information, we're one of the 9 districts working on those competencies. And our Strong Starts joined us last week. And it's so lovely to hear the ministry start saying communication doesn't start just at 4 and 5-year-olds when they enter kindergarten. There's a whole element of communication before that. So in my time, Sherry's talking about 30 years, this is my 37th year, we didn't really have a lot of the early learning in our school system, and now we do, and that's really exciting, and that's a great promising practice. And it's a practice that the board has supported with us through the early learning, and we appreciate that. I want to talk about assessment for learning, and just to remind everybody that we've been doing this for quite a while. In the days when we went to school, most of us in this room, the teachers taught a lesson. Now what we're doing, it was a lesson given to everyone. Now what we're doing is assessing before. There's no point teaching everybody the same thing. They all need to know it. So assessment for learning is a great thing we've been working on for quite a while here. Goes back to Layton, Fay, Adrian Gear, and this year we're working with Sandra Herbst. And we're very happy to have her in. Tom's already had her working with our secondary folks. It was very successful, and she'll be working with our elementary and K-12 folk coming up in November. I'd be happy to send the dates out to trustees if they want to participate in that evening session along with teachers. We have 100 people signed up to come in the evening for that assessment for learning with Sandra Herbst. So it's pretty exciting. So we've been doing the assessment for learning strategies. Great work, and it connects in later in a promising practice with the work that a previous board did in the curriculum support teachers. So having those people in the schools working side by side with teachers with the planning and the assessment continues to happen in our district, and is certainly something that we're seeing great results with. A couple other promising practices. I think the board's aware of the elementary reporting pilot that we've been doing with the ministry. Really exciting work. We presented at the BCSSA conference in Kelowna in the summer, and our teacher leaders will be presenting this November at the BCSSA conference in Vancouver. People are pretty excited in the province, and it's very small. There's only 5 teachers working on it. I'm kind of keeping it a little bit tight because I want to make sure that it doesn't kind of, and we want to make sure it's really good and we can support those people. How much more do you want me to keep going?
No, I think we're good, unless people have questions of you. Esther, can you just move on to the promising practices in student services?
In student services, I earmarked a number of our practices, a number of the initiatives that we've been working on, and one is self-regulation. Our occupational therapy department has established a program called the Zones of Regulation in almost all of our schools. Last year they were able to teach teachers, build capacity, and work in different areas to teach self-regulation, because what we've learned about regulating ourselves is that the better that students are regulated, the better their learning is. So it's a very important concept, and we're seeing that concept spread through regular education in that many of our teachers and admin have been part of Stuart Shankar's work. We have his writings and his books available in our libraries. What our OT department is doing too is teaching a program called the ALERT program, which teaches about self-regulation, and also last year they initiated an 8-week program in 22 classrooms that also used a program called astronaut training. So we've been teaching self-regulation in many, many different ways. We also have a very strong and viable technology department. We have a lead teacher of technology and 2 EAs that work on software and hardware throughout our school district, and they have been involved in making sure there are hardware programs on computers that will help with adaptations and accommodations, modifications for students who have written output problems or who are non-readers or who need that kind of support. In the achievement contract, we've outlined many of the different initiatives of that particular department. We also were involved with a resiliency project last year, a project that was earmarked to develop a plan that would teach resiliency K-12, so that we're looking at how to teach grit and persistence and resiliency in our students to make them better problem solvers, so that they can greet the 21st century as very strong problem solvers who know that when they falter, they'll be able to get up and approach the world. We've also initiated a new personal safety program in our school district called Kids in the Know. Throughout all of our elementary school programs, our elementary schools, we have the Kids in the Know project, which is a program that teaches about personal safety, about strangers, about cyberbullying. It's a very up-to-date program that kind of supersedes programs like Second Step or Do So or Magic Circle, those kinds of programs. We also began an initiative with positive behavior supports in our schools, and last year 5 elementary schools began initiating positive behavior supports through the Connection for Change group in our province, and we'll be holding a kind of renew, review, revise session this fall for those schools. Did you want me to go on, or? Yep, that's about it. Thank you.
Any questions from trustees?
Okay, sure. Any trustees have questions, comments? Hearing, seeing none, thank you very much. We'll move on to the new items.
On page 7 of your package are just a number of good things that are going on in our district. Randy Gray's presentation earlier was one of the many things that are going on in trades, but as you would expect, there's some just excellence going on in other areas. Kids are had an opportunity to engage in a variety of different things. The document, the page in front of you speaks about the challenge retreat on Mount Washington. Just a formal thanks to the teacher of that program, Jocelyn Weistrom, who not only being an amazing challenge teacher, organizes some great opportunities for students. And if you just have a look at what they were able to offer for students on that retreat, an amazing amount of organization went into it, and of course the community always steps up. Mount Washington, particularly Torrey & Sons, that we had a number of community sponsorships around some materials and equipment. And then, of course, a group of volunteers who spent time with kids, teaching them skill set from their own personal area of passion, not the students, the actual presenters. You might actually notice the name of a trustee on here somewhere, because Mr. Coleman was there teaching knots and marine knots and ropes and things like that, because of course Trustee Coleman's first life was as a sailor in the Navy. And so it was a wonderful opportunity for our students. On September 4th, we had the shoreline cleanup, sponsored this year by Cold Rock Road Elementary School, and they went out into the community and picked up garbage, which is always wonderful. We were fully enrolled. There wasn't a School District 71 site, including the maintenance building and the school board office, that was not involved in the Great BC Shakeout. And why they used the picture of me in the paper from last year, I have no idea. It was not flattering then. It wasn't any better this year. And I know now why they didn't ask me, because they probably would have said, oh. So they used the same picture. And then just a reminder that as we move into October, this is when schools are full of sports teams, and fine arts departments are beginning to work on their a showcase musical or a production, and as we move into November and December, that's when all of those things come to real fruition, and there will be lots of opportunities for the community to come into our schools and see our kids in some of their curricular and extracurricular activities, because they're well underway at this point in time.
Thank you. Trustees, comments, questions? Sheila?
I just have a little comment on the shakeout, because it came up at the Lake Trail Kayak last night, and I wanted to pass on lots of compliments to Paul and the work that he did in getting information out and the work that they're doing. But there was a question from parents about, they were very pleased to hear that there is a plan and that there's so many resources are coming to the school, and that they're really getting our preparation and the training that the staff are doing with the students was great. But they felt that parents aren't getting that message, and the community don't necessarily know how well prepared our schools are. And the suggestion was that Paul and Ian probably could do an assessment school by school. Like, if this is the goal, it's almost like an achievement contract. We want to be at 100%. Different schools are probably at different stages. Where are they along that continuum? And then be able to get that information out to parents, so that some of them, because some of our schools in the past haven't had a lot ready in those CCANs and don't have didn't have the really, I went into the office once and said, where's the emergency manual? And nobody knew. Right? So we're way past that. It's a question of doing an evaluation midway through and saying, where exactly are we? Which schools still need the help, and getting that word out. And I'm sure that Paul knows that, but it was about getting it out to parents that hey, we've got the plan, and so do you have your plan at home? The next piece.
And that is part of the Hour Zero, and that certainly is part of the extension of that through the emergency preparedness. We've got pre and semi-post, and then before we started the Hour Zero program, I know there haven't, Paul and Ian have done inventories of every building in terms of the physical plant preparedness, the what's in those sea cans. We are restocking based on that inventory. Schools will be notified when they're all up to, or what's still left outstanding. Conversation right now is around the food piece, the cost of food piece, and how do we share that cost perhaps with schools, because we can't. It is 3 times the most costly piece of this whole piece.
Yeah.
So there is a plan to do that, and I would say we're halfway through where we need to be. Well into the implementation, and we've actually gotten inventories that you've talked about. We're moving to fill those gaps, and then we'll report out.
Good. Great.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not we can get Paul Berry to come up and give us a quick presentation on where we are right now. I know that his goal was to ensure that those sea containers were stocked by the end of October. That would be interesting to find out where he is in that stage and what the plans are for the future.
So we could do that probably in a December board meeting, because all that stuff has been ordered. All that stuff, in fact, I was just talking to him about it yesterday. It just had some of it, and it's arriving in bits and pieces and then being distributed. So by, I would say November, but it would be probably safer because we're waiting for shipments. Some that were promised, to be there within 2 to 3 weeks are still not here yet because we bought in such bulk. So at the December board meeting, I'm certain that he could have a status update report as part of the presentation.
I think just to build on Sheila's report in terms of where the school sites are at, the notion of an earthquake, that seems to be when people think emergency preparedness, we think of earthquake, but it is only one of a myriad of things that are possible. And so far, certainly in the schools that I attend as liaison, I'm quite impressed at the sort of breadth and width of the conversation. So it's not just specific to it's recognizing that it is but one.
And if I could just add to that, so part of what Paul is busy doing right now is training a not great number of staff. So principals, vice principals at the front, admin assistants. There'll be places for teams on schools to be involved. The higher level, like we all had to be trained in the summer, and that's training that is multi-purpose. It's not just for earthquakes. It's for everything from earthquakes, critical incidents, flooding, fire, the kind of emergency that would need us, whatever emergency would occur that would need us to look after our kids for 3 to 5 days, whatever its cause. And so it's got multiple layers that would respond differently at different occasions, but that's this Hour Zero training. And so he's working on training. We've done PVPs, just about finished them all. Senior staff are all done. Admin assistants are halfway through done. There's 3 more big lots of folks to train, and then individual school teams that might have a specific skill set that they require.
Oh, Jen?
So in addition to the zero hour, kind of addition to that one there, my understanding is some of the schools along with this are also having some training through that on lockdown procedures and what to do with that and posters on that one. And it'd be really good to know to share that with the parent community, also with the board, as to what should, in the event of something happening, what is the process, what's going to happen in that. I think that would be really good to know. I was at a PAC meeting and they were talking about the process and what they were now doing to support teachers and parents with that process. So it'd be good to also know what's happening.
And that's a part of Hour Zero, and actually, is it on the website, Josh? Thank you. Today, there is a letter from me to parents that's on the website, and we'll be distributing it as well by hard copy to many school communities, or emailing it out through Center Voice to those parents that we have an address to. And that speaks about this whole notion about being prepared for a variety of different things and what we're working towards. So that will have gone on the website today.
Thank you. Through you to Human Resources.
And on page 9, we have one new retirement, and it's a member of my staff, Sue Susan Sunby, HR coordinator, is retiring next week on October 31st after 10 years of service with the district. This will be and just like all the retirees that will have during the school year, she will be honored in June for the time function.
We move to the cooperative gains update, and on behalf of the Secretary Treasurer, Superintendent.
Trustees are well aware that the ministry, actually government, through the Ministry of Education, mandated that school districts create a cooperative gains mandate savings plan to cover the increase in QB wages for the fiscal year 2013-14 and 2014-15. There was a deadline given to school districts of October 15th, and senior staff have worked to provide the board with a plan. The plan is in draft form. That's why you don't have it in front of you, because the October 15th date was the date of submission to the ministry for them to go over and either endorse or approve or return, one would assume. Not really sure what they would do with that, but it would be returned to us if it wasn't, in their eyes, meeting their benchmarks. The idea of that would be that it would come back to districts sometime before the end of December, because the deadline from the ministry for all of these plans to be approved and attached to, as an appendix to the QP contract, the formalized, ratified QP contract, it needs to be appendix to that by December 20th. So our district submitted a draft savings plan based on the 2 years that we need to comply with. It's just a 2-year piece, so the remainder of this school year till June 30th and the following school year to June 30th. This school year we needed to find just over $300,000, and we found that our benchmark at the senior staff level, and certainly from trustees, was to try and keep those savings draw away from students, things as far away from the classroom as we could keep them, but understanding that this board, as most boards across the province did, had to find savings to be in this budget year. Last year, we had to look for $600,000 last year. So we took an approach of trying to find as reasonably level playing field for the savings plan draw as we could, and we have made suggestions to government that would find some savings through things like we will save a bit of money because of all the emergency preparedness and our new focus, our revised focus on health and safety. Our work safety C rates are better, so we've saved approximately $4,000. So that $4,000 can be. There's a whole set of rules about what you can use. I forgot to say that. Whole set of rules that government will only allow you to use, and or things that they highly suggest you use. So we have dedicated the money that we save through WorkSafe. We had a vacancy that we haven't filled right now. It's in a operations position. We have looked at savings around through our information technology plan. We reduced the number of printers, highly unpopular, but it saved us some money. And we've done those kinds of things, and at the end of the day, we've gotten fairly close to the $300,000 that we needed, and with the board's permission, we will draw approximately $30,000 out of our reserve. Some districts across the province, this is the first year that boards are allowed to use their reserve, surplus reserve. When I was just recently attended on island superintendents, almost to a district, districts used all of their reserve to make to do that, but they did admit, as they said that to us, that that would leave them without reserve for next year, and they weren't sure how they were going to handle next year because their cuts were going to have to be very deep. We need to find approximately $600,000 next year, and right now the rules say that we can't use reserve, so we'll have to then we have to project in other areas of where we can find those savings. But at the end of the day, we sent a draft on October 15th for the total that we were accountable for, which was $314,000, and we're waiting for information back from the ministry. At this point, we've been doing everything we can for it to be within the structure the ministry gave us, and we would be surprised if it came back to us in that we hadn't been compliant to where we were. So that's where we are. There has been no clarification on the part of the ministry of how long it's going to take them to get it back to us. 60 districts, and they wanted it on October 15th. So one would hope that they would get it back to us fairly soon, because if there are changes, we need to have those changes in place to the plan in order for it to be ratified by December 20th of this year. So that's where we are.
Janice?
No one's disputing the fact that teachers deserve a wage increase. They did. To me, it's the process in which school boards have been forced, and I'll say forced, to comply with the ministry directive. And I think it's important that our board write the Minister of Education and talk about the process. Over the years, my years as a board, on the board, we have done our best working within the budget. Every year we have worked very hard to ensure that our money is spent accordingly and very specifically. We've not touched our students. But every year, the Ministry of Education, I find, throws us a little curveball. Last year, it was the pension download. This year, it's something else. So next year, I'm sure it's going to be something else. And I'm not arguing over the fact that we do have to find the money. But to me, it's the process. And I think we need to let the Ministry of Education know we as a board do a very good job of balancing our budget. We do a very good job of working with our community groups and our things to best serve our students with the money that we have. And I think that I let them know that I believe last year they tried this. 60 boards wrote the Minister of Education, said it's not going to work. They backtracked it. A new Minister of Education comes in there, and we've basically been told, do it my way or the highway. And I think that we need to send a message to them of our displeasure with how this happened.
So are you making a...
I'll make a motion. Go ahead, the Minister of Education over this issue.
Second.
Can I just stop? The motion is somewhat incomplete. Just
Well,
to read.
Okay, the Minister. Well, I'm not sure how
Word it.
how to word it.
So how about...
I'll leave it. Let somebody else make the motion.
No, how about spend a bit of time just crafting something, and there may be other comments, and then I'll get back to it. Any other comments? Some hands?
We did discuss it when the draft was presented, and that we would write a letter, and there are many letters flowing to them that would be good templates for us. So I think we're missing the piece that we'll write a letter to the minister expressing our displeasure with the process and concerns of the impact it would have on our students.
Actually, that's what I just wrote down.
Perfect. We're on the same wavelength here.
Yeah, after going to Vista and meeting with the new Minister of Education and his comments about unwilling to listen, that rather scared me a little bit, because listening doesn't necessarily mean there's a resolution at the end of it. This is very complex, and I think, financing, you're being forced into a bottleneck here, and there doesn't seem to be any resolution. It's like, there's no light at the end of the tunnel right now, because, we're having a finance meeting next week, and we've got to sort out a number of things and find money. But, there's no money tree there. We just, our educational system here is extremely effective and very efficient. However, we're now looking at other cuts, particularly for this year. I think it's extremely unfair that the ministry has done this downloading onto school boards, and obviously with the number of letters that I've been getting emails on, districts are responding, not very happy. However, we still have to do it because we have fiduciary duty to the ministry. So I think a letter of some type, we need to express some frustration with the lack of clarity on where are we going and where are the finances coming from in the future for public education in the province of British Columbia.
Janice, do you have your motion?
Well, my motion simple, and someone can add to it. We write the Minister of Education a letter expressing our concerns and displeasure with the process, and the impact those cuts will have on our district.
Have a second. Thank you. Any further discussion?
I think that we'll hear from us this weekend too.
I think there's a number of letters out there. I mean, you don't have to, we don't necessarily have to plagiarize, but there's certainly a lot of good letters out there that highlight various issues about what's going on in finance. We can certainly use some of those.
I understand the minister is hoping to come and visit us at the end of November. Perhaps we could let him know that we would be expecting a funding announcement, a substantial funding announcement.
Good luck with that
If
one.
he wants a photo opportunity in our schools, there's a price. It's about $300,000. But he can have as many photo ops as he wants on that basis. Unlimited access.
Just before calling a vote on the motion, what was particularly unique around this is not so much the draw on our dollars, because that's happened a number of times over the last number of years, but the speed at which the districts, and particularly the secretary treasurers, were required to come up with a meaningful plan. So that's a very dark lining to the cloud. The potential silver lining, or the only silver lining that I'm imagining, is that in the end, what the Ministry of Education expects is that we balance our budget versus our costs versus our expenditures. And so it's my opinion, and my opinion only, that while a plan has gone forward by all districts, it doesn't lock us in. If there are ideas, if there are opportunities that arise, difficult as they may be, that are better suited throughout the course of the fiscal year, then I would think there hasn't been any signal from government to say that we couldn't adjust. So we're locked into providing numbers and a source of the dollars to support those numbers.
It's a plan.
But we can't. It's a plan at this point.
I concur. To me, the fact we have in the past been asked to find money elsewhere, but this one here is the concern, is the process. In the middle of the summer, we had a Ministry of Education fire a board, and then direct us, you will do this or else. So that we need to speak to address that process and why boards have been where we are today. So I think if we address that, I think we will address some of the other concerns that we've been talking about.
Thank you. So on the motion, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Grinham, Finance Committee.
Yes, well, we're going to, we've decided, because of the cooperative games and the process that our finance folks were in, we delayed our Finance Committee meeting until next week to now flush out some of that stuff that's been recommended in the balanced budget for cooperative games.
Thank you. Board business, inquiry update.
I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Do we move to the second item?
Thank you. Policy 3065, known as the harassment prevention policy, in light of the requirements of Bill 14, we have some changes need to be made to our policy, and the big changes including the wording workplace bullying in front of harassment. So the policy will deal with workplace bullying and harassment. Through Bill 14, workers' compensation will be expanded to include diagnosed mental disorders caused by significant work-related stressors, including workplace bullying and harassment. The policy was revised on the 24th of April, 2012, and so you can see in the attached, all the red sections are the suggested amendments to it, which are simply the wording workplace bullying, and as well as a statement in the actual policy itself, which is the board affirms workplace bullying and harassment is not acceptable and not to be tolerated. The policy as it stands meets all the requirements and will in full compliance of the bill in terms of a process for reporting the incident and how it's investigated. It's all in there. So it's just adding the workplace bullying part So the senior management recommendation of the board set the change.
Recommendations before you?
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Second? Sheila, thank you. Any discussion? Rick?
I'm just a bit confused. Isn't bullying and harassment one of the same? No?
Legally, they're not, and they're not, they have different definitions, and they have different pieces of law attached to them, so they're different, actually. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Times have changed.
We'll show you the two of them later.
So all those in favor of the motion? Sorry, did you have a question?
So before we're voting, there were a couple of grammatical errors that I was hoping, if we vote in this, will they get corrected, or does this mean it's approved this way, or what?
We'll take that under advisement.
These are grammatical errors in
There's
the
comma
other part of the
and,
text.
It's
something.
workplace bullying and harassment are not acceptable.
We'll fix that.
I'm picky, but
Thank you,
Can we
Trustee
say-
McDonald.
can we
so
say
I
that
just
that's correct?
we're voting on the spirit of
Thank
the
you.
thing.
All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Janice, PCSD Provincial Council reports.
So we received before you today 7 motions coming to Provincial Council, and the reason they're on the agenda, and normally in the past we've just brought before you this conversation, you guys give me some feedback on out in there, but because of the nature of some of the motions and the times we're in today, I think it's really important that as a board, I get some direction from the board here as to how you want me to proceed on this. There are 2 that the BCST Board of Directors has specifically asked the board direction from our board, and as I get there, we'll go through that one. So 9.1 is basically, we talked about the QP has received a raise and teachers are in negotiation, but there's one group of employees of the districts, actually was brought up at the board's chair meeting I was at, that has not received a raise, and they've been at a freeze, which is our principals, vice principals, superintendents, assistant superintendents, and that group there, and that's still, they've been, the wages are still frozen. So this has come back from a motion from one of the boards, and it was actually brought to the attention there that we feel that if other employee groups are getting raises, should we not also look at this group? So this is just a motion that we've talked to the government to consider them also. So just that, just if anybody has anything they want to say, they don't like that, let me know now. If not, I'm going to sort of lean towards supporting the fact that we support our executive.
So just for clarity, all of those items that are defined as board discussion is really to give Trustee Caton an indication of where the board generally comes down to assist her with representation at their next meeting, other than the 2 where they've been asked for board direction, which will process in a vote, as it were.
The next
So
one.
this is really, are there any comments one way or the other on the first item? Sheila?
I wonder if we could recommend that they be given the same compensation program as the BC Hydro and BC Ferries executive. I would in favor of that.
Take that
All right,
consideration.
take that under advisement. Thank you.
The second one is that, the motion is that Ministry of Education fund all those rate increases.
Hey,
So if you guys
I'm
oppose
in for
that,
that
or you
one.
guys in for that?
Absolutely.
Unanimous support.
yeah, good luck.
So is there
Any discussion on
any
that one? Or
discussion on
you-
that?
And as goes on, sometimes motions amend the motions on that one, and this is all going to be live. You can actually watch it if you want to. And if you feel that, see me drifting late, text me, let me know that we don't, so we'll keep in contact on that one. The other one is the election to the bargaining committee. Now, as you all know, BCPC is no longer there, and we're looking at how do we elect replacement reps for BCPC, and this is just the fact that they will be elected but in a different name, different branch. So maybe not BCPC rep, it may be the BCT as bargaining reps or something like that, is making sure that we have some structure in place, similar to what we have now, but just under the different umbrella. So we've had, in the past, we've had a BCPC rep, and we're continuing that under a different umbrella.
Are there any opposing views to that? Strong opposing views? Okay. Seeing none, we move on to number 0.4.
Okay, and this is where I need a recommendation from the board. As you all know, that there was a task force that was targeted on, struck, I should say, with respect to the new replacing the BCPC board of directors and the process. And the recommendation is for you, and my concern is, are you in favor of that recommendation, or are you opposed to that recommendation? And if you're in favor for it, I would support it within that framework, and if not, then I will take the board's direction on that one.
So formally, are there any trustees opposed to this item coming forward with this board's support at Janice's
I have a
meeting?
question though.
Please.
Later on, there's another motion in here, and it talked about various, how that would look like, and they talked about a hybrid
You
model.
talk about 9.5?
Bargaining
Yeah.
structure.
Okay, that's totally separate. And okay, what happened is that, as you recall, there are a number of our boards, and we received letters that are not happy with the direction the BCST board has taken. So this is their version. They're not comfortable with this one here, so they're entitled to bring forth a motion to provincial council asking us to support their views. So if we support 9.4, 9.45 is invalid because that is asking them they're not supporting 9.4. They want the separate model, and that's what the difference is. It's coming from, 9.4 is coming from the board of directors based on the feedback that we've gone out. 9.5 is coming from the Sandwich Board of Education. They don't agree with the board of directors, and they're asking us to go a different view.
Okay.
Is that correct?
So from a recommendation, the board direction appears to be to support
Okay.
9.4.
And 9.5 would be not supporting if you support 9.4. Just for information. 9.6, request for an additional general meeting. As you know, we have a December Academy, and we normally, in our bylaws, have one AGM per year. Motions come from provincial council asking to hold a special AGM at December Academy to talk about what's happened over the last few months regarding bargaining, BCPC, and other structures. And if it's voted for, if the recommendation comes from provincial council, we will have an AGM added to our December Academy, which will change the framework of it a bit. It'll be more like a business meeting where we have motions and we have some sort of debate discussion over the direction that the Minister of Education has taken towards this funding formula and other options. So I would like to know from the board, are you in favor of that, or are you not in favor of an AGM? And I do need some feedback on that one.
Thank you, Graham.
I think it's important that there's an opportunity for boards of education to have an opportunity to speak regarding the number of changes that have gone on, certainly with BCPC, and what are we going to do. And I think the CSTA is sort of crafted to their best ability what they can do, but I think they need, when you look at some of the letters that have been going back and forth, perhaps having an extra special general board meeting at the academy, even if it takes one day, certainly did get to flush out a few things and provide some direction to BCSTA as a board. I think it's important that we tell our association where we want them to go.
So just for clarity, my understanding is that this was requested simply to tag it to the December Academy.
Yes.
The bylaw has provision for a meeting to be called.
At any time.
At any time. So they're just saying, are we, as trustees, comfortable that it's tagged to
December.
December Academy?
So currently, the agenda for the December Academy does not include anything to this effect, because I've seen no business, because I'm actually on a committee that's working on the agenda. And this would actually change the agenda specifically to have the conversations that I think is important, that boards have that conversation with the direction we're going. And if not, I think with the flavor that we're having, it's really important that we have our BCST Board of Directors and our president. And the Ministry of Education has said he wants to deal with one board, one group, and if we as a association can show the support to our directors, I think that would give us a weight in more some of the conversations we're having regarding the funding and implications and the cutbacks that we are facing over the next number of years. So I think it's a good thing to consider. Whether it happens or not, I can't guarantee that, but I think that to have that conversation, as Rick was saying, is very important to these times.
Yeah, I think that it's probably a good idea. I would there's, a range of concerns about, I think there's unanimity about what happened when the minister dismissed BCSDA from that process. We're unanimous, but there's some division around what BCSDA's response was in the interim, and they acted during the summer, and it seems like we should discuss that. I hate it to become more polarized, but I think that waiting almost a year to endorse or amend the actions that the BCSDA executive took on our behalf, it's a long time. I think that would be very helpful to, I think in the long run there'd be a statement of support for them, and that would be helpful because those ongoing questions about whether they had a mandate and whether they should or shouldn't have done it are not helpful to the situation. So I think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, further to that, the understanding is that they're drafting legislation for the spring session. So
it's too late if we discuss it.
If we talk about it next spring, well, the horse has already left the barn.
I must say, with that was an announcement about changes at BC. It seems like there's more dark politics going on.
Okay, so I think you have enough information to suggest that the board is fine with the decision, should they make it, to add this item to the academy in December.
And the
final one?
The final one is the local government election cycle. And as you all know, at the UBCM, there was a motion brought forward that they have municipal elections every 4 years. And the BCST Board of Directors have asked a recommendation from each board, provincial council, to whether we support that 4-year cycle to be concurrent with the Municipal Act and have it changed, because that, I believe, is also being looked at and changed to spring Municipal Act on the election. And whether you believe trustees should also be elected the same as City Council on a 4-year cycle, or are you happy with the way it is? And I would need some direction from this board as to whether we support that 4-year cycle or stand with the status quo.
Is there anyone who's opposed to 4-year cycle?
Oh, okay. I was just thinking that the resolution was that we would have a vote, but it's this meeting. It wasn't voted.
Just a comment is I can't see the provincial government changing one and not the other one, because we are blended with an election cycle with municipal elections, so I can't see it changing anytime soon, because it would
It'd be a cost.
A huge cost to establish a 3-year cycle for boards of education, and then a 4-year term for municipal elections. It just doesn't make any sense from a financial perspective. So I think that it's a given. If the government makes the decision to go to a 4-year cycle, it's going to be a given.
And to add that they've asked the BCSD what their thoughts on that is, and they're getting some feedback once again from the members. Do we support that change to the Municipal Act, going to that 4-year cycle as trustees? Do we support that? And the recommendation would be yes or no, we don't. So if this board supports that, I'll bring forth that recommendation that we support that 4-year cycle, and see what happens then.
Decided it.
Okay.
Yes or no. It's already decided.
Okay. So do you have what you need?
I have what I need. The meeting is this weekend. I will report back to you
Thank you.
after.
Response to
The trustees are aware that there was a letter from Ms. Richards regarding her concerns. They were about their operational concerns about Airport Elementary School, and I'll turn the discussion of the briefing note, which is on page 48, over to the Director of Operations.
Okay, thank you. The airport school has an interesting history for School District 71. There's a partnership with National Defense to use that school site, and it fell under National Defense curriculum for many years. In 1996, that's when National Defense said they were going to no longer have schools dedicated on bases. And from that point forward, as they attempted to sell all those school assets off, they did no maintenance on the school. And it was in the early 2000s that there was really a deal struck between the school district and the base to purchase the school, though it took a few years to come to fruition. So there was a significant maintenance deficit when that school was acquired by the district, and quite a bit of work was done, probably about $600,000 worth of work in 2003, 2004, and at that point the school had a population of about 300, just declined in recent years to about 150. And there was a hiatus between that work and really what's happened in the last couple of years to address some of the cosmetic and mechanical issues that remained at the school. I think the school's now in excellent condition, painted inside now. Lots of work inside, and in terms of our schools, probably mechanically, it's one of the soundest schools. The school in there, a lot of the concern was around the size of the gymnasium and what it offered to the kids. It's a small gym in the model that's at schools like our in Yale, and certainly not unique in the district. But it is not huge, but the school population is certainly not very large either. But it's, I think Airport Elementary is a well-maintained, high-quality school.
Thank you. Trustees, any comments, questions? Thank you for your efforts in pulling this together, and I know that Airport TAC will be interested in reviewing it, and I'm hopeful that the information can also be shared with the administrator at the school, just so he has it. Thank you. And correspondence from Steve Stanley.
Because this is really an issue for the implementation through senior staff, probably would make sense that I might just respond at this point to it, just in terms of some clarification. Understanding the concern of the CTTA and appreciating the concern, and I appreciate the first paragraph, where the President of the Union recognizes that we're faced with some pretty difficult district budget decisions. One of those budget decisions that the board endorsed was the decision that in some circumstances that students, that absences, one-day absences for teachers or staffs who are, or teachers who are non-enrolling and certain other categories of staff, that they would not be replaced on the first day of absence for a medical appointment. In the letter, it notes that this is a new policy. It isn't actually a new policy. It's a policy that was in place in this district in the past. Certainly is a policy that's in place in many school districts across the province. Some folks had, like we had managed to get away, were in a budget position to move away from it for a period of time, and we find ourselves in a position where we're moving back towards it. In the letter, particularly in the third paragraph, the CDTA notes a concern about students who were, for example, would have gone to LA for support, and this would be simply if their LA teacher is a non-enrolling teacher. They shouldn't be enrolling students. And one of the things we discovered was that we've got in a couple of our high schools LA teachers who are actually enrolling students. So we'll work on that for next year. And in those cases, if those teachers are actually responsible for classes and courses, they would be replaced. In the cases of our high schools, where the learning support teachers, they're called in high schools, there's 2 of them. Of course, if they were both away, we would replace them. And remembering that for the most part, in those LA classrooms, very often there are other paraprofessionals, other adults in those classrooms. There has always been within this policy in the past, and of course we certainly presented it this way this time, that there is always the opportunity for a principal on that day, with the local knowledge they have about what's going on in their school, with the fact that they will know their schools better than we do, that if there is something that is going on in that school that really necessitated the replacement of that person who's deemed to be absent, they have the ability to override the policy and call somebody in. And there was never any intention and nothing operationalized where a student with special needs, chronic health, behavior would ever not be without an EA. And certainly that was never ever part of the plan from the very beginning. I think it was just a bit of a miscommunication. And so where we are right now is that we did a ton of research around, for other reasons actually. It wasn't just about finances. In fact, didn't start like that at all. We were looking at our patterns of absenteeism, and we noted that there are a number of days lost in our district, QP and teachers, and PDPs and senior leaders. So there are one-day standalone absences, and we looked at whether or not there were times, ironically, in many cases of these specialist teachers and specialized staff, we don't have the replacements for them. They're very rarely replaced because we actually don't have enough TTOCs or teacher on calls to replace them in special areas, or in QP, they're very specialized positions and you don't normally replace them on a one-day absence. So we looked at what had gone on in the past, we looked around us across the province, and we made a decision to present to the board this pilot for this year in many ways of our what would the savings be if we did not replace certain categories of staff. And so I just wanted to assure trustees and to the CDTA that students' safety, students' health conditions, students' special needs are always paramount. They were never included in the exemptions. So we went that's why it took so long to sort of make sure that we went through every category of EA, every single one that we have, every category of QP employee, every category of non-enrolling teacher, made exceptions that they were excluded from this, and we will continue to do that as those things arise. And always the principal has the opportunity on that day, for example, admin assistants, singleton, when there's just a single admin assistant in a building, they will be replaced always. When there's more than one, and it's the beginning of the school year, it's collecting fees day, it's all of those days that would put a huge stressor on that office if that person was replaced, the principal can always call and have that person replaced. So that local knowledge will be in place.
Thank you. Questions or comments, trustees? Sheila and then Janice?
Well, I'd like to encourage you to kind of err on the side of replacing, if there's any questions, and let's use up our surplus if that's what it takes. That's what the minister's putting it. That's what it's there for. You guys manage the budget as well as you can, but it is important that we're not impacting. And I just know a couple of schools where the principals are picking up a lot of different little pieces, and that's a problem for us too. So, how tight are we expected to get with this guy, right?
Janice?
We received a letter. Do we have sent a response to the response back yet, or are we going to be sending a response or just a verbal conversation? Like we would be responding about the receipt of the letter. Receiving file, are we going
The letter is to the board.
To the
so
board.
you have to tell them that you would like a response to it.
I actually would like us to have a response back to CDTA. I think they've written us a letter expressing some concerns, and I believe it's important that we send a letter back to them. That's my own personal opinion, and I'd like to make a motion that we do respond to them in a formal letter written. We've taken their concerns seriously, and we're addressing them, so I think it's important that we acknowledge that they've written us that.
So the motion is a written response
Written
to
response.
the September 17th letter? Do you have a seconder?
I'll second
Discussion? Janice?
No, like I said, I think they've written a letter with expressing some concerns. I think that it's imperative as a board we just acknowledge that we received it, and we will take in consideration what they've said. I think Sherry's addressed some of it, but I think we also need to address it as a board. It's written to the board.
Thank you. Rick?
I think just as a common courtesy, when we receive correspondence, we should be responding back to it as a courtesy, even if it's firstly, thank you very much for your letter. We've taken it.
I believe we do.
That happens.
Yeah. So I think this is appropriate.
And again, just perhaps it's not obvious, but normally a letter, when it appears for the first time on the board agenda, appears in the correspondence section for some direction. But this letter did come to us shortly after agenda setting for the September meeting, and felt that it was my view that it would be unfair to stretch it out for another month before being able to provide a bit of a discussion at the table. So on the motion to write a letter, all those in favor? That's carried. Thanks. Okay, just before we move into questions, I would ask the board's patience for just about a minute. Next month, in November, like every November, this board elects a chair and a vice chair. I've had the privilege of being the chair for the first 2 years of our 3-year mandate, and very much appreciated the the support and work ethic of my fellow colleagues, those here and the one currently in the UK. But I do believe, and we've chatted many times, my view is that other trustees certainly have the wherewithal, the capacity, the ability, and the interest, and should have the opportunity to occupy the chair and the vice chair position. So as we move forward next month in the public meeting to elect the new chair and vice chair, I will happily take a seat on the left or the right side of this particular chair, and would ask that trustees not put my name forward for either of those positions. Certainly my interest in being a trustee remains exceedingly high, and while it's a bit too early to make definitive statements about the fall of 2014 as we move towards municipal elections, my interest is certainly to continue to stay as long as the good people of Area B will have me. So, thank you. All right, questions? Meeting? Seeing none, motion to adjourn?
We did pay our heat bill. I know we did,
So-
and I don't know.
Bloody
Freezing.
Sorry.
Close the door with
We can't blooming.
Motion to adjourn?
second. No, when we just.
All those in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.